So what we are going to do today is fairly straightforward. We are going to figure out how to crack the IIFT, and it's going to be a 1 hour 15 minutes kind of a session. I'll not get into extreme depths about which questions were asked at the IIFT and what exactly was the cutoff. I have a slide which will talk about the cutoffs. So that is basically one thing, but otherwise I'll just talk about the test, the pulse of the test in general, and some things that I have observed over the years. So IIFT has a very specific pulse, so to say. Of course, all the tests that you take would have a specific pulse associated with it, right? You can't say that I have prepared only for the CAT and I'll go to the IIFT and will hope a similar result. That is generally not going to be the case. So we'll try to touch the pulse of the IIFT. Let's see. Right. So I'm Shashank Prabhu. I hope all of you, most of you would have attended some or the other session by me. So I'll be taking you through this presentation of how to crack the IIFT. I'd done a similar session last year as well, so I'll be borrowing a lot from that session as well. But the fresh slides are basically in terms of one strategy that I have kept and the cutoffs that are there. But otherwise, it's more or less going to be on similar lines. Right. So we'll start with the agenda. The agenda is fairly straightforward. We'll look at the exam pattern and cutoffs. So what exactly happened last year? What were the cutoffs? How exactly to calculate what should be our target and all those kind of things. Then I'll talk about the exam strategy and obviously what to do next. So once you are done with, as in considering that you are here and there is barely any time to go for the test, what exactly should you be doing over the last few days? Yeah, Mansi, can you post questions now or later? Again, I think you can go through the presentation once because chances are very high that I would have covered whatever doubts you have. Beyond that, if you have a doubt, you can just put it. But again, as in if you are asking about the cutoffs or the chances, then I don't really know what to say. Okay, but if it's relevant on the slide and if I haven't covered it, you can just put it. Otherwise, I will. Sparsh, I got your question. Please tell for non-engineers who are not good at quants, how can we optimize? Sparsh, I hope you will be staying throughout the session because I have something on quants as well. So I hope you are here for the next hour. All right. Okay. So what to do next? That is basically the last part of the session. Okay. Cool. Sure. So if you look at the test is fairly straightforward in nature. Duration is obviously 2 hours. You get 2 hours to crack the test. Number of questions were 110 last year. Total marks 300. It was the same thing in IIFT 2019 and 2021. So last year's IIFT, which was supposed to happen in 2020, happened on Jan 24th, I believe, this year. So that's why it's called IIFT 2021. For the test that you are going to take is also IIFT 2021, but it's basically for the 2022-24 batch. Right, so that is basically how IIFT names itself. Right, so 300 marks were there. Number of questions 110. There is differential marking. So last 2 years we have seen differential marking being present for 3 sections. So Quant, LRDI, PARC, these 3 sections. You get 3 marks for every correct answer. And of course, there are negatives also, which we will see going ahead. And for the general awareness section, general knowledge section, GK section, you have 1.5 marks per correct answer, right? So that is basically the marking scheme that has been present over the last couple of years now. And yeah, Shantanu, again, I'll cover it. I hope you are there for the next 1 hour. Right? Please don't ask section specific doubts now. I will cover those. In case there is something that I missed, then you can maybe check out at the end. Okay. So that is how we will go. Fine. So there is differential, or there has been differential marking rather, and again the pattern is expected to remain more or less the same. So questions were of 3 marks for 3 sections. So QA, LRDI, VARC. There were 3 sections that were there, for which each correct answer would have fetched you 3 marks. And for the GA section, general awareness, general knowledge, whichever way you want to look at it, 1.5 marks were awarded for every correct answer. Right? So that is basically the nature of the test. You don't really have sectional time limits. You can use 1 hour maybe if you want to do QA. You can prioritize the order in which you are going to attempt in whichever way you want to. You can start with QA. You can end with general awareness. You can start with logic. You can start with verbal ability, whichever way you are comfortable with, you can do that. So that way it's a very open test, so to say. You're open to do a lot of things. It's not restrictive as is say an MAT or a CAT, right? So that way it's more of strategy. If you look at it. Okay. The sections are, again, the first section or one of the sections will be verbal ability, reading comprehension. The other section will be quantitative aptitude, quantitative ability. The third section will be logical reasoning, data interpretation, and the fourth section is general ability. So these are the sections that are there. Sometimes you might see 6 sections in the IIFT. So last couple of years it has not been happening. Again, I don't expect it to happen this year as well, but be very careful when you are reading the instructions. So before your test starts, you will get an instructions page wherein it will be explicitly mentioned as to how many sections are there, if there are sectional cutoffs or not. So all these combinations have happened in the past. Last couple of years, no, it has been consistent. But if you look at the IIFT since 2007, 2008 and on, if you look at the kind of instructions that have been there, or the nature of the test that has been there over the years, there have been 4 section papers, there have been 6 section papers, there have been sectional cutoffs, and there haven't been sectional cutoffs. So all these bases have been touched, right? So don't go into the test assuming that DI and LR is one section. They will split it. You will be able to see it into different tabs. So that is something that they will do. But read the instructions carefully. If DI and LR is supposed to be answered as one section, or there are sectional cutoffs for each of these subsections. Because in many years, 2015, I remember, a lot of people did not read the instructions properly. And 2015 or 2016, they didn't read the instructions properly, and it was a 6-section paper. A lot of people ended up not attempting anything in DI, and that's why they were not able to get calls. So these kind of things happen. So make sure that you read the instructions carefully at the very beginning of the test. Understand whether it's a 4-section paper or a 6-section paper, whether they have sectional cutoffs or do not have sectional cutoffs. Okay, so that is the first thing. Chetan, I just mentioned it. You can. All right. Now, if you look at the cutoffs that are there, right? So if you look at the cutoffs that are there, verbal ability, reading comprehension, the total number of marks were 105 last year, right? So 105 marks for verbal ability, reading comprehension basically means that there were 35 questions. 35 questions with sort of a negative marking of +3 or marking scheme of +3 -1. So those of you are asking whether there is negative marking. Yes, there is negative marking. There has traditionally been negative marking for the IIFT. So it's a +3 -1 marking scheme. So if you look at verbal ability, reading comprehension, the total number of marks were 105, meaning there were 35 questions that were present. The cutoffs for GEO basically stands for general candidates, EWS candidates, and OBC candidates, right? So general, EWS, OBC candidates had a sectional cutoff at 19, and SSP is basically SC, ST, PWD, Kashmiri migrants, and non-migrants. So that's basically the category into which IIFT divides candidates. So 15 marks was the sectional cutoff for VARC. Now, what exactly is the sectional cutoff percentile? Nobody knows, but I think a safe estimate would be 50 percentile. So if you are somewhere around 45 to 50 percentile at a section level, you should ideally be able to get or be able to clear the cutoffs. But again, the sectional cutoffs are nominal in nature. 15 or 19 is basically a very small number if you look at the overall context of the section. Okay. So quantitative aptitude, again, I don't know from where you have got that data, Sparsh, but this is what I have got from the list that they had floated. So this is official IIFT data. Quantitative aptitude, if you look at it, the cutoffs for general EWS, OBC candidates was 8. For SSP, it was 6. For logical reasoning, again 13 and 10, and general awareness was 5.5, 4.5, right? So that was basically the cutoff. It's very nominal in nature. You need not worry about clearing the sectional cutoffs. It's barely a question of roughly 5 to 6 questions in each section. And I'm sure that you will be able to find so many questions that you will be able to attempt confidently. Just have a look at whether the cutoff is applicable for 4 sections or 6 sections. That is the only thing that you have to check. Once you do that, you should be fine. Should not be an issue. Okay. So that is basically it. General awareness, the negative marking will be +1.5 and -0.5. So 1/3 is 1/3 of the maximum marks that you can get for a question will be the negative mark. Okay. DIPA, it seems very unlikely they will release a notification wherein they will say that it's a 4-section paper or a 6-section paper. For all practical purposes, assume that it's a 4-section paper, but be prepared mentally for a 6-section test as well, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. When we will clearing, we will be getting call from no Shruti. Next slide. Yeah, so just clearing the sectional cutoffs is not enough. Obviously, the sectional cutoff is very nominal. There will be a lot of thousands of people who will be clearing those sectional cutoffs. So the sectional cutoff is not the only criterion, similar to the CAT. So if you have, let's say, these marks that I mentioned on the previous slide as your sectional scores, that does not guarantee you a call from the institute. So what you have to do is you also have to clear the overall cutoff. Now the overall cutoff was 43.5 for the general category. For EWS, NCOBC was 36, and for SC, ST, PWD, Kashmiri migrants, it was 15. So these are the cutoffs that were there. Now, what is this 43.5? This 43.5 is not just your IIFT score. So even this year, IIFT has released a notification which talks about the weightages that have been given to a lot of parameters that are there. Okay? So the parameters are something like this. So your IIFT score is scaled to 73 marks, meaning basically if you have scored, let's say 100 out of 300, let's say for example, it basically means that you would have scored 1/3 of 73. 100 out of 300 is 1/3 of the total, no? So 73, it is 1/3 of 73. So that's basically how that scaling happens. You also get rated on a scale of 0 to 10 on the basis of your 10 standard marks. 0 to 10 on the basis of your 12 standard marks. There is no distinction in terms of boards, years, and all those kind of things. So they have, I think, a flat marking scheme wherein if you have more than 90% in your 10th and 12th, you get 10 marks. 80 to 90 is, I think, 8 marks, and so on. So that is basically how the classification works. The detailed notification is available on their website. So they have already released it for this year. Yeah, 90 plus percentile is considered 10. Okay. Overall cutoffs are of marks or questions. Gorakh, no exam, I think, gives you cutoffs on the basis of questions. So it is in terms of marks, and as I'm explaining here, the marks are basically a combination of whatever has been given. Okay, so IIFT score is 73, 10th score is 10 marks, 12th score is 10 marks. Academic diversity for non-engineers, it's 5 points. For engineers, it is 0 points. What all comes under non-engineering and engineering has again been uploaded on the documents. You can go to their website and just check if you fall under. You'll be able to understand it obviously whether you are an engineer or a non-engineer, but you can just go there and check if you are going to get these bonus 5 marks or no. Similarly, in terms of gender diversity, female candidates will get 2 marks directly. Male candidates will not get it. Right? So out of these 100 marks, 43.5 was the cutoff for general candidates last year. So again, you can sit and calculate where exactly are you and where exactly should you be. So in my case, let's say my 10th score was 81%, my 12th score was also 81%. I'm just taking a random example. I would have got 8 marks in 10th, 8 marks in 12th. Let's say I come from an engineering background. So I get 0 marks for academic diversity. Let's say I'm a male candidate. I get 0 marks in terms of gender diversity. So basically, I'm already at 16. I have to basically look at scoring 27 marks out of 73. Now, if 27 is expected out of 73 or 27.5 is expected out of 73, what will be the score out of 300? That is basically how you calculate. Okay, so that's what we are going for. Now, again, that 43.5 is something that might change. I'm not saying that this is something that will always remain constant. It will always remain 43. It can become 50 if the test is extremely easy. It can also become 35 if the test is difficult. And that has been a pattern that IIFT has observed. Either the test becomes easy, wherein a lot of people might be able to cross that 150, or the test becomes difficult, wherein people might struggle to cross 100 as well. Right? So generally, there are no in-between papers when it comes to the IIFT. So that is basically my take on this thing. How do they calculate for 73? Anna, I just mentioned, whatever score you are getting out of 300, what would you have got out of 73? So if you have got 150 out of 300, 50%, then what would you have got out of 73? 50% of 73, 36.2. That's it. Okay? Sure. So IIFT mocks I will come to it at the end. Harsh, I don't know. I will not be able to share the slides. You can take a screenshot if you feel like. So that is not a problem. Okay, so this is basically how it works. The cutoffs that I mentioned on the previous slide will be a combination of everything that we have here. So obviously, IIFT score has a weight of roughly 75%. You can say 3/4 of your overall score will come from IIFT or your IIFT written score. So if you have an average-ish kind of a profile, I would still suggest that you take the test very aggressively, because what happens is people can score insanely high in these kind of tests, right? Just to give you an example, in IIFT 2019, the topper score was 226 out of 300, whereas the cutoff was somewhere around 138, if I remember correctly. Okay, so 226 was the score that I had got in IIFT 2019. I know someone who had got a score of 207 in IIFT 2019. I know plenty of people who had crossed 150 in 2019. So if you have an average profile, or even if you don't have an average profile, it would behoove you to score as many as possible at the written test. Because going ahead, if you look at the weight of the written score in the final calculation, it's again going to be a good weight. As in 40 to 45% is generally the weight that they have for your written score. So which is again a huge weight, right? So if you do really well at the IIFT, and if you have an average profile, even then you can expect to get through. Some people are asking what happens if you do not clear the sectional cutoff, but you clear the overall cutoff. I think it's self-explanatory. Sectional cutoff is the first stage. Only those people who have cleared the sectional cutoffs will be considered for the next stage. Once you reach the next stage, they will have a list of some 2,000 people, more or less, whom they will select for the GDPR. And that is basically how the overall cutoff is decided. They won't decide the overall cutoff first and then look at the list of candidates. That is not how it happens. They will look at the list of candidates. They will shortlist, let's say, 2,500 or 3,000 candidates in best case scenario. And 3,000 candidate ka whatever score will be there, that will basically become your cutoff. Right? So that is basically how things work. Yeah, Palak, I think work experience score comes at a later point in time. So I think they have 3 marks for 2 to 3 years of experience, 2 marks for 1 to 2 and aise aage, and 1 and then 0. So that is basically how I think they have distributed it. But from what I remember, it comes at a later point in time. Yeah, around 30,000 people, right? Correct. They had released the information last year. I think 36,000 people had registered and 30,000 people turned up for the test. So that is basically the number of people. Okay, sure. So now we'll go to the section-wise analysis bit. I hope the marking scheme and the instructions and everything is clear. I hope there is not a problem with that, so that you can just understand where you are and you can calculate accordingly as to what score should you get. If you ask me, blanket take, if I have to make a blanket take, then I think at least 125 or 120, 125 should be your target with an average profile. If you have a brilliant profile, even a score of 90 might be good enough. But again, I'm talking about normal scenarios wherein you might have to score roughly 110, 120 at least. Try to maximize it as much as you can. Now going to the section-wise analysis, the first section that we are going to look at, or you can say a subsection, is data interpretation. So as I mentioned, last year data interpretation and logical reasoning were clubbed together to form one section. Okay. So data interpretation section ke andar last year there were 16 questions. Traditionally, we have seen 16 questions at DI. Okay. Even traditionally, you have always sort of seen 16 questions at DI. Some exceptions have been there, obviously, but most of the times we have seen 16 questions at the DI subsection level, which are generally divided into 4 sets. Okay. Now, as I was mentioning, marks per question is 3. So you get 3 marks for every correct answer, and you lose 1 mark for every incorrect answer that you have. So plus 3 minus 1 is the marking scheme. One thing you have to understand is there is no calculator available at the IIFT. So I'm sure that most of you would have taken SimCats. Most of you would have been mentally prepared to deal with the CAT, which has an on-screen calculator for the LRDI and the Quant section. But IIFT affords you no such luxuries. One. The second thing is, if you look at the data interpretation sets from yesteryears, so last couple of years, it has still been better. But if you look at, say, IIFT 2015, if you look at, say, IIFT 2010, IIFT 2011, if you look at the DI sets from those years, or even IIFT 17 for that matter, the sets have been extremely difficult to crunch, right? It's very difficult to look at those numbers. The numbers are generally abstract in nature. The sales figures will be like real sales figures, 15173, 1267, 1593, some random values will have, right? And then you will be expected to find out in which pair of years was the growth the highest, in which year there was the largest fall that was there. So those kind of questions might turn up, is what I'm trying to say, right? So IIFT DI is notoriously known for having difficult numbers, and that's why DI will not really get a chunk of your score from DI in most cases, right? But obviously you have to look at the situation. You have to look at which couple of sets are the ones that you should attack, and ideally you should attack at least one DI set is basically my take on the entire thing. Okay, but no calculator is available in the at the IIFT, and yes, you can assume and go that the sets are going to be calculation intensive. Of course, there might be some sets that are not very calculation intensive, but as a rule of thumb, go to the test with the mindset that the sets are going to be calculation intensive. Okay, then if there is some set which has very few numbers, it's in the form of a basic table, missing data wala set, easy set, then you can obviously prioritize that set, but go mentally prepared for a difficult DI section. Okay. Yeah, compared to the CAT, how complicated or how different is the DI or LR section? See, CAT is not exactly structured. If you look at it, now there will be very few question types that will be structured in nature. So even when you would have been preparing for CAT, LR, DI, I am sure that you would not have been able to compartmentalize sets. Chalo, while preparing, you might be able to compartmentalize sets, saying that this is a games and tournaments set, this is a pure linear arrangement set, this is a pure matrix arrangement set, and so on, right? But if you go to the test, you will not be able to put your finger on the set and say that this is an exclusively arrangement set. Aisa nahi hoga. It's very difficult to get a question or get a set that is designed on one topic. IIFT ke andar you will see sets which are based on one logic. So IIFT ke andar the complication is not in terms of interpreting the set. You will be able to interpret the set very quickly. Interpretation is generally not going to be a problem at the IIFT. The problem is going to be execution. The problem is going to be calculating stuff. CAT ke andar, it's the other way around. It takes a lot of effort to interpret the set, represent the set on your rough sheet. Solving is generally not going to be painful because once you crack the basic logic, uske baad solve karna is very easy. But in terms of the IIFT, it's going to be a difficult journey for you to sort of solve this set. That is going to be something that will consume time. So that is the mindset that you have to go to the test. Okay. LR can be NMAT level, you can say. LR can be NMAT level. Just that NMAT ke andar your LR might also include verbal reasoning, which is generally not the case with the IIFT. IIFT ke andar your LR sets will typically have proper LR sets, logical reasoning questions. NMAT ke andar you can also get verbal reasoning. Plus NMAT has a lot of assorted questions. You have input output, you have coding decoding, you have sequences and series, you have puzzles, you have those these questions, magic square wale questions and all those things, numerical logic wale. IIFT is not that heavy on these types. Okay. So last year, if you look at the test, again, I hope all of you have at least looked at last few years' papers, because that is the best preparation that you can get. So line chart, there was one set on line chart, there was one set in the form of a table, one bar chart, one pie chart. So it was nicely spread around. Each type had 4 questions each. So last year we got a very straightforward DI subsection. Okay, 16 questions was what we had. I'll cover what exactly do you need to do and how do you tackle it during the test at a later point. Okay, but 16 questions plus 3 minus 1. Okay, next one, if you look at it, logical reasoning. Now last year, logical reasoning and data interpretation. So you can look at 2019 and the ones before that. 2019, 2020 was also there. I think last year you might be able to find if people would have downloaded the key wala bit. Anyway, doesn't matter. Logical reasoning wala bit, if you look at it. So logical reasoning, there were 14 questions last year. The year before that, the split was 18 and 12, I believe. So 2019 IIFT, the split was 18 questions in DI and 12 questions in LR, from what I remember. But last year, it was 16-14. Okay. Now, marks per question, again, it was 3 marks for every correct answer, minus 1 for every incorrect answer. The sets that were present were in the form of coding, decoding. So there was one set on coding, decoding. Sorry, I'm talking about individual questions. There were some individual questions that were present, and there were some sets that were present. The sets that were present were based on circular arrangement, tournament, and scheduling. So again, normal questions that you would have seen at other places, right? Circular arrangement will basically be some people are sitting around a circular table. That's basically more or less on similar lines. Complication agar karna hai, to you might also see something which is related to blood relations. But again, it was fairly straightforward, not as in you would have known the question type at least, if not the solution. Okay. Tournament based logic, scheduling based logic. So again, the sets that were present were pretty mainstream. There have been single questions that have also been coming. So each set was 4, 4, 4. And if I remember correctly, there was 1 question on coding, 1 on linear arrangement, and 2 on standalone puzzles. So that was basically the split of the section. Okay, so that's basically how it goes. Or I think it was 3, 3, 333 and 211, that kind of a thing. Yeah, so DILR has been combined. So that's the thing that I've been talking about since the beginning of the session. DILR has been clubbed over the last 3-4 years now. But before that, there has been a precedent wherein IIFT has floated 6 section papers. So last year, if you look at it, DI and LR was a club section. I just split it into 2 parts just to make our analysis a bit easy. But they have been a part of 1 section. So you do 14 questions on logical reasoning, it's perfectly okay. DI 0 karenge to bhi chalega. It's okay if you do not solve anything from DI as well. It's not going to be a problem if the 2 things are combined. Okay, you get all 14 right, you get 42 marks in the DILR section combined by only solving logical reasoning. It's perfectly okay. It's not going to be a problem. You solve all 16 questions from DI and get 48 marks, even that is okay. Don't touch LR, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. But only for this particular type, right? So that's what it should look like. What is the difficulty of LR? Again, not very difficult, Himanshu. So fairly straightforward logic, as in you will be able to solve it if given sufficient time. The problem is 120 minutes and 110 questions. That is basically the game changer. So even if you remove the GK sections, which should not take more than 5-10 minutes, the other sections you will not really have a lot of time to solve all the questions. So that's why prioritizing your attempts becomes very important. Standalone, the sets are not difficult. If I give you 10 minutes to solve each set, definitely each and every one of you should be able to solve this. But you can't afford to spend 30 minutes on one section or 30-40 minutes on one section. Okay. Can we get chessboard based set in IIFT? Generally, no. You will not see very difficult question types. You will not see CAT level K question types at the IIFT. Traditionally, also we haven't seen. Typically, they are matrix arrangement, linear arrangement, circular arrangement, more or less arrangement based questions, conditionalities, grouping wale questions. More or less, utne mein kaam nikal jata hai, right? Possibly Venn diagram based logic. That's basically it. I don't remember seeing a set which is extremely complicated and is critical to your final score. If it becomes very complicated, then don't go for it. Let go. Okay. Yeah, you can shift back and forth within among sections, and there is no sectional time limit. There is no priority. I have covered it right at the beginning. Okay. Then this is basically the most dreaded section. I'll talk about the timing strategy at the end. I'll also talk about the things that you should keep in mind when you're solving the test at the end, right? So we are going section-wise format. So we have already covered your DILR section. GK section, if you look at it, the total questions were 20, 1.5 marks per question, 0.5 negative for every incorrect answer. So you could have got a maximum of 30 marks, right? That is basically what we were going for. Now, the static and current affairs bit has been sort of more or less 50-50 in a way. Static, I think 2 years ago, static was some 12 questions and current affairs were some 8 questions. Last year, static was 9 and 11 were current affairs, but I think that has got mostly to do with there being no major static news last year, except obviously one big news. But last year, because not a lot of events happened, not a lot of conventions and meetings happened, I think the weight for static GK came down. This year, again, you might see a 10-10 kind of a split on static and current affairs. Okay? Static GK basically means headquarters of organizations. Then you can talk about capitals of countries, stock markets of particular countries, rivers that are present in countries, geography, power stations, all those kind of things, right? So we can talk about those things when it comes to static GK. Or even the first person to win a gold medal for India at the Olympics, the first person to, I don't know, climb Mount Everest, those kind of things. The first person to land on the moon. These are all static GK questions. Current affairs wale questions will essentially be in which place was or where is Davos conference routinely held. Last year some India and other military meet happened at which place. What was the venue of the Olympics, or what was the venue of the Paralympics, let's say, for example. Those kind of things, current affairs based, right? So typically you will get questions on these. Generally, IIFT will focus a bit more on business GK. Business GK means you might want to read about the CEOs of organizations, the taglines of companies, the logos of companies in some cases, right? So all these things you might want to be well versed with. So I'll cover the resources at the end. What do you need to use for the GK? a bit, and obviously the answer is you already have everything in the form of one. So you have your GK zone that is present. You can go for static GK, you can go for those monthly capsules that are there, and you can also go for exam specific GK. So these three resources should be good enough to cover your GK, right? And typically what happens is you will just go and read a lot of things, and familiarity is basically going to be the key. So I'll give you a small example. If you look at quant, let's say for example, the answer is 15 for some question, let's say. If you make a small calculation mistake, you can also get 20 as the answer. So that is one of the options. If you make another calculation mistake, you can get 12 as an answer. That is another option that you have. In terms of GK, the options are far apart. Generally, they are far apart. The options will not be in the form of very close sounding names. The options will be generally be far apart. So even if you have, I don't know, even if you have sort of a diffused memory, even if you have just read it superficially, and you can just recall that, acha, out of these four, I think this looks familiar. Most of the time, you will be right. If you have read it, that is, you can't just guess without knowing it. But even if you have an inkling of what the answer could be, most of the time you will be right. Now you can obviously try these things in your mocks, but that is what has worked for me over the last many years. I'll talk about who is scared of GK and why should you not be scared of GK, but that I'll talk about at the end. Fine. So that is the GK section that we had. Reading comprehension. Reading comprehension is one thing that has remained constant throughout the last 10-15 years of IIFT. The total number of questions was 16 again last year, divided into 4 passages with 4 questions each. The number of marks per question again is +3. Negative marking is -1. Last year, 2019, if you looked at it, I think all 4 passages were roughly around 600-ish words. So they were not very long. But last year, if you look at it, there were a couple of passages that had 800 to 900 words. So they were slightly longer than usual, right? So you had 2 passages with 500 to 600 words and 2 passages with 800 to 900 words. Now, what does 800 to 900 words look like? It basically, you will need to scroll once and you might need to scroll again. So 2 to 2.5, 2 quarter-ish scrolls. Matlab, ek pura ka pura, you will go one pura ka pura page, one frame, and then you will have to scroll the same amount again. So it's basically that much, right? So that is basically how it works. Typically, if you look at the split of questions, generally 50% of the questions will be fact-based. Typically, 50% of the questions will be fact-based. Again, some questions might be based on title of the passage. What would be the analogy for something? You might get a vocabulary question. It's very rare, but you might get a vocabulary question in RC as well. Meaning of a metaphor or meaning of an euphemism. If there is something that has been used in a passage and you want to you want to find the actual meaning of what has been said, right? So that is basically something that you can get. Inferential questions are obviously there. Now, what makes the reading comprehension section easy or difficult is the nature of the questions. Length of the passage, so obviously it's there. So IIFT ke andar, you go to the test expecting a longer RC. Go to the test with the expectation that you are going to get a 1000-word RC or 1000-word RCs is what you go to the test with an expectation, right? The more difficult thing is the nature of the questions. So IIFT typically has 2 levels of difficulty. Easy level mein kya hota hai? They will just ask you a factual question. Which cities did this person visit? Or in which order did this person visit these cities? Chronology question, let's say. Ya fir, which of these resolutions has not been mentioned in the passage? Straightforward question. You just look at it and you're done. The second level of difficulty is wherein you will have sub questions. Which of the following 3 statements are, or how many of the following 3 statements are true? Which combination of these statements is true? That kind of a thing. And section, uske andar there would have been 3 different things. First sub question or first statement will be this person visited exactly 3 places. So then you have to go and search for 3 places where this person has visited. Second question, second statement will be this person visited this place before this place before this place. So again you have to go and verify. So multiple level aa jayega uska, right? That is what makes it slightly difficult. The inferential questions are anyway going to be difficult. So I agree. But factual questions के अंदर you have to understand whether the test is on the easier side or the difficult side, and this is generally a good indicator. If you look at the question type, nature of the questions, you will get an idea if the test is going to be easy or difficult. So if there are multiple layered questions, then you can say that the section is typically going to be on the difficult side. Of course, it's a very crude way of figuring out the level of difficulty, but yes, it works in most cases. Okay, so that is one thing that you can think of. Right, so that's what we are going for. Be mentally prepared for lengthier RCs. You have to be mentally prepared for lengthier RCs. Pick up any IFT paper from 2000 whatever, from whenever it's available. It's available, I think 2006 onwards. It's available. You pick up any paper and you have a look at it, and I'm sure you will see that the length of the RCs is huge. Even on a typical A4 sheet that you have, you will see 1 and 2 sides of the paper being occupied by one RC passage. So it can be that lengthy, right? So typically this is how it goes. Are RCs easier from the CAT? Again, easy is a how do I put it? It's a subjective statement, right? CAT ke andar you are supposed to read the passage, understand the passage, maybe form an opinion or at least understand what the opinion of the author is, right? So that is what we are supposed to do at the CAT. At the IFT, in most cases, you might not even be required to read the passage. So just to give you a parallel, if you ask me CAT 2017 ke passages, I might be able to tell you each and every passage of CAT 2017, right? But if you ask me passages from IFT 2019, I will not be able to tell you even one passage, right? So that is basically the difference. So IFT ke andar, reading the passage or understanding the passage is not exactly generally going to be your topmost priority. Your priority is going to be searching where the data has been given. Just figure out what exactly is the bit that is important and what pertains to a particular question. Figure out the correct answer, mark it and go. That you don't really sit and ponder on the beauty of the RC. Okay? Can RCs be left alone and still clear sectional cutoff? Yes, Pandan, you can do that. So RC and VA was again a combined section last year and even last year. So obviously, if you do only RCs, you can still clear the cutoff. If you do only VA, you can still clear the sectional cutoff. That is possible. But if that is a good decision, is something that I will leave to you. I would not go for it. I will attempt each and every question that I, irrespective of VA. Can you go from question to passage? You can do that. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, you read the question first, try to get an understanding of what the passage is about, and then you go. Yeah, I would not recommend reading the passage. As in, I have never done that. I have taken IFT what 4 or 5 times now, 5 6 times now, and I have never read the passage. I will not be able to tell you even one RC that I remember, and I generally remember RCs well. Okay. So that is the problem. So IFT and CAT RC level of difficulty comparison, chalk and cheese. Yeah, both of them are completely different. IFT will focus more on your reading speed and your ability to look at the data as quickly as is possible. CAT, on the other hand, will focus more on patient reading and understanding the passage. So both of them are difficult in their own way. Both of them are easy in their own. But standalone, if I were to comment on accuracy, I think IFT RCs may your accuracy will be slightly higher, but then it will also take a lot of time. Okay. Verbal ability, if you look at it, yeah. So verbal ability, if you look at the number of questions last year, it was 19 questions that were there. Now, of course, verbal ability is one section wherein IFT goes slightly, I would not say crazy, but it's slightly different compared to what we're expected to solve, right? So almost every alternate year they have been giving a crossword. Even I think last year was the case. There was a crossword that was present. They have synonym antonym questions. They can have questions that are based on figures of speech, similes, metaphors, euphemisms, synecdoches, hyperbole, and everything. So all those question types you can see. Something like origin of words. What was the language of origin? Which of the words is German in origin? Which of the words is Latin in origin? So all these kind of questions you can get at the IFT. See, these are questions that are like a quiz question in a way. Yeah. So not everybody will know the answer, but if you have an inkling of what things sound like in a particular language, ideally you should be able to crack at least some of them. I'm not saying you'll be able to crack each and every question, but obviously some of them you should be able to figure out, right? So German words will typically have that I don't know, TZ, CH kind of a sound. So you know that okay, this sounds German in nature. So those kind of things. French will again, if you look at the French words that you might have heard of even in your dinner menus or your food menus or something, you would know that okay, French sounds something like this. You need not have an intimate understanding of French, but that's basically what helps. But again, I'm not saying that everything is easy here. Of course, you will need some time to get used to the question types, because a lot of you might not be used to these question types. You know that it's a grammar question, I know. I have to figure out the error in the sentence. Or if there are 4 alternative representations of a statement, then I know that achha, this is basically a representation that sounds the best. Okay, that much you know. Synonym, antonym, you also know. Chalo, this is basically something that sounds more correct compared to the rest, or more familiar compared to the rest. But crossword ko solve karna might not be everybody's cup of tea, right? So that is something that you have to be careful about. It is very different compared to what you might find at other tests. I can draw a parallel to maybe SNAP in its good years. SNAP in I think 16, 17, 18, when it used to be a detailed test, 40 questions from VA. Wahan pe you could have got something similar, but otherwise you would probably not see these kind of questions at other tests. Okay? Yeah. Please go back to the last slide once. You can have a look at the recording, I believe, iske andar, but that was the last slide. Okay, 19 questions plus 3 minus. Fine. So that was basically the split. You also get jumbled paragraphs. The good thing about jumbled paragraphs is that you get options as well. So CAT ke comparison mein, this is slightly easier. The passages, the paragraphs are also slightly easy. It's very, very, very easy to get 100% accuracy in VA. 100% accuracy. Attempt, I don't know, but accuracy wise, grammar questions are not going to be, generally not going to be very difficult. Correct, incorrect, jo bhi hai. One word substitution, if you have a working knowledge of vocabulary, fir bhi more or less you will be able to manage one word substitutions. Synonyms, antonyms might be difficult. Crossword mein, there will be a lot of clues. So there will be a lot of clues that will be present. I'll just have to eliminate options quickly and get used to that thing. I think that is very key. IFT ke andar, if you go unprepared for the test, if you haven't seen past IFTs and then you see the VA section, then you will be surprised. And once you are surprised in any test, more or less your chances are done. Figure of speech can come, but you can't prepare for everything. That is my point. Is word power enough for vocabulary? I don't know. See, word power made easy at the end of the day is something that has been written with the intent of making you get used to figuring out new words on your own. That is the idea behind the book, right? The book does not say that this is basically the list of all the words that are present on the planet. Aisa to nahi hai, no? So it will help you get used to vocabulary or learning vocabulary. But after that, you have to put in the hard work. CAT VA material is enough for, if you look at grammar, if you look at parajumbles, if you look at even vocabulary for that matter, the CAT material is good enough. Yeah, I'll talk about it at a later point in time as to how many risks should you be taking. Okay, Harshit, I just mentioned the answer to that question. Yes, it is sufficient. Okay. The last section that we have, someone asked about VA and RC. As I mentioned earlier, last year ke context mein, if you look at last year's paper standalone, VA RC was one section. You could have attempted only VA and scored all the marks there and not even have looked at the RCs. It would have been fine. It would not have been a problem. Okay, it would have been okay. But if you have RC as a different section and VA as a different section, both of them will have different cutoffs. Sectional cutoff 0.5 bhi agar hai, even if the sectional cutoff is 0.5 marks, you will have to attempt at least one question, no? Right? So go with that mindset is what I'm trying to say. Last year it was fine. You could have attempted only VA, it would have been okay. Only RC, okay. You can jump from VA to RC, RC to VA. All kinds of jumps are allowed, not a problem at all. IFT ke andar, they will give you the entire test. They will ask you to do whatever you want to. You can sit there and do Quant for 2 hours. Nobody is going to stop you from doing that. Okay? You can easily go from one section to the other. Should not be an issue, unless something drastically different happens, you should not face an issue. Okay. Quant में there were 25 questions that were present last year. So 25 questions plus 3. So 75 marks per section was there. Again, -1 for an incorrect answer. If you look at the split is more or less on similar lines as what happened in terms of CAT as well. So arithmetic is obviously roughly 50% of the entire test. And arithmetic you will see questions that are based on simple interest, compound interest, TSD more or less. Time and work is very, very, very popular when it comes to the IIFT. Averages, someone entered the mix, someone left the mix. Those kind of questions are very popular, as in they are very prominent when it comes to the IIFT. Okay, so arithmetic is something that will have a very high weight, followed by algebra, geometry, modern math, and numbers, right? So that is basically how it goes. More or less, algebra, geometry, modern math have equal weights if you look at it. Whether you can leave a section for option, I would suggest no. Have a look at past year IIFT papers. That is my answer to everything. If you have a question as to what topics can you leave in option, I would suggest that you have a look at past year IIFT papers. Do this exercise on your own. I can tell you the answer, but do this exercise on your own. I'm sure it will benefit you a bit. All right. So have a look at past year IIFT papers, actual papers. 2020 nahi mila to bhi theek hai, it's okay. 2020, 19, I don't know if they are available, but 18 ke pehle everything is going to be available. So at least have a look at those. IIFT has not changed in terms of the nature of the questions. So the nature of the questions has remained more or less same over the last 10 years now. So pick up any 4-5 IIFT papers, past year papers, 15, 16, 17, 18, nikal ke dekh lo. I'm sure you will be able to understand what is the nature of the test, and that is very important. Okay, so that is what you have to do. In terms of the questions, one subjective take, the questions are generally on the lengthier side. Matlab the questions will not be one-liners. SimCats ke andar or even CATs ke andar, if you look at it, many questions will basically be one-liners. What is the region bounded by mod x plus mod y equal to 4? It's a very, very straightforward, very common question, right? So that kind of a question. Typically, you will not see those questions at the IIFT. You might see 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 questions out of 25, but very few questions will be in the form of one-liners. Okay. Questions are generally going to be A and B invested in a business. A invested 60% of the amount, B invested 40% of the amount. At the end of 6 months, B figured out that he would have to charge 30% of the total profit for his services to the company, and so on. So those kind of things you will have as you progress, and it will be in the form of a nice story. Nice, pata nahi, but it will be in the form of a story. Okay. So typically that is what you're going to get. You have to be very comfortable reading these things. You can't be impatient when you're solving IIFT Quant. If you take care of that, you should be fine. The other thing, geometry. Yes, someone mentioned geometry. Yeah, IMS portal has 2021 paper. Yeah. How many papers to look at? As many as you can. I would be very happy if you look at everything, because you will see some questions that are very typical of IIFT, which might also repeat. So I remember this one question. There is a square that is present. From each of these corners, you cut out triangles, and at the end of it, you get a nice octagon. So what is the ratio of the areas of the octagon to the area of the square? It's a very common question at the IIFT. What is the distance between two parallel lines whose equations have been given to you? Very, very common question, typical question at the IIFT. Distance between a point and a line. So these kind of questions are very typical of the IIFT. So if you look at the tests, you will understand what I'm talking about, right? So these kind of questions you might see. That way, conceptually, you might have to dig deeper. So IIFT has also sort of asked questions that were based on concepts of derivatives. Now, I'm not saying derivatives as a concept, pura derivatives padh ke jao, but in the form of maxima and minima. So you had to apply first order differentiation, second order differentiation to figure out what is going to be the maxima or the minimum value. So typical questions that you have, right? So that is a possibility. Trigonometry is a possibility. You might have to know basic identities. I'm not saying go crazy and remember what is sine 63 ka value and all those things. That's not required. But at least understand what exactly is sine square theta plus cos square theta, 1 plus tan square theta, 1 plus cot square theta. Ye sab cheeze if you are aware of, or even sine 90 plus theta, sine 90 minus theta, basic stuff. If you are aware of, you should be fine. Should not be a problem. Sine of a plus b, a minus b. So the module that you have 3.10, 3.11, 3.10, 3.10, 3.11, jo bhi hai, from the IMS material, I think it's more than enough to crack trigonometry. Okay. But just have a look at it once. I'm not saying sit and do trigonometry over the next 20 days. Have a working knowledge of what trigonometry looks like is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Geometry ke andar coordinate geometry is something that might be important in this particular situation. Sequences and series might be important. AGP, how to resolve AGPs with second or third level of difference being constant. So all these things are important when it comes to the IIFT. Okay. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's okay. Don't worry. These are the last 7 questions that we are going to attempt in this section anyway. So don't worry about it as much. Okay. So it's okay to not know these things. You will still be able to crack the IIFT ka Quant. Okay. Again, same suggestion. Have a look at the past year IIFT papers. Kitne IIFT papers is completely up to you. At least 5 is what I would suggest. Given the amount of time that you have, at least 5 IIFT papers, just go through them and see what exactly is asked. If you are able to make sense of most of the questions, I think you should be fine. If you are not able to solve even 2 or 3 questions, then generally there's going to be a problem with your concepts in general. It's not IIFT specific, it's in general, right? So at least 5-6 questions if you are able to manage, I think you should be okay. Okay, matlab, in terms of clearing the sectional cutoffs. You will have to make up for it by doing extremely well at the other sections. Okay. Now, there are a couple of strategies that I have mentioned here. This is basically what I use generally. I also have another that I have mentioned on the next slide. Yeah. So I'll talk about how many mocks and what to do at a slightly later point in time. So sample strategy 1 that I have. So see, generally I'll explain the rationale behind doing this. So I follow this thing whenever I take the IIFT. So I have not taken it last year. I won't be taking it this year as well. So, but this is basically what has worked for me over the last many years. So if you look at the order of sections that I follow, I'll start with the GK section. And I'll start with the GK section purely because I used to think that I was extremely bad at GK at some point in time. I was not very bad at GK. I was okay at GK, but I had this feeling that competitive tests ke andar, you need your GK to be at a different level, which I'm sure a lot of you will be able to resonate with. But I figured it out at some point in time that is not the case. GK is something that you can get better at. Okay. So that is basically what I do right at the start. So what I do is I'll go to the test. I'll do my GK in the first 10 minutes and get done with it. Why? Because all the things that I would have mugged up over the previous 3 or 4 days, they would be fresh in my mind. It's purely psychological. Even if I solve it after 1 hour, it should not make a difference. I know. But what I will do is I will solve those 20 questions or whatever questions I'm able to solve at the beginning of the test. Right upfront, 10 minute ke andar GK uda do. Don't think about GK after your first 10 minutes. Is what I follow. After that, I'll go for verbal ability. I figured out that I'm better at dealing with surprises compared to a lot of other people. So even if you give me a crossword, you ask me a kangaroo word, you ask me a synonym, antonym of some random word that I might not have ever heard of in my life, I back myself to do a good job. Okay. Worst case, I will not be able to figure out vocabulary. It's perfectly fine. I will make up for it by doing well at grammar, by doing well at paragraphs. Okay. So those are my next 15 minutes for verbal ability. I'll try to finish off verbal ability in 15 minutes. Whatever 19-20 questions are there, it's generally not going to be very difficult. Vocab, either you know it or you don't. It's not about if I think hard enough, I'll be able to get the answer. Is generally not something that works with vocabulary. Okay. So 15 minutes is decent enough for verbal ability. Reading comprehension, I will not solve the entire RC, but I'll probably give 20 minutes and we'll go through the questions. I will look at all the direct questions. So as I mentioned, 50% of the questions are typically direct in nature. So out of 16 questions, either 2 RCs completely or maybe a couple of questions from each RC, which is purely factual in nature. Where did this person attend? Which are the 3 tenets of this particular philosophy? Very straightforward questions. You just read the questions, you mark it, end of the story. Right? So those kind of questions I will cover in 20 minutes. In a good year, when the passages are shorter, the questions are almost entirely factual, I might also be able to complete RCs in 20 minutes. But I will not overshoot these 20 minutes ka time. Okay? Even if I have done 10 questions, it's okay. 20 minutes for 10 questions is fair enough. I will look at it at the end if time permits. But RC ke liye 20 minutes is good enough at this point in time. Okay? That is basically my attitude. You exactly match the following kind of a thing. RCs mein I generally treat it as a search and find all. It's sort of a search and find. You search for something, you find it, you plug it in, end of the story. Okay. Then I go for DI. DI may have kept 10 to 15 minutes depending on the nature of the DI. So if you look at IFT 17, right? IFT 17 was insanely difficult in terms of DI. I don't know if people were able to solve even one set out of 4 in DI that year. 17 or 18, one of those 2 years, right? Extremely difficult. I would say it was nonsensical in a way. People would not have been able to solve more than one set. Okay. And it was a standalone section in that year to make matters worse. So in that kind of a scenario, I might not want to spend more than 5 to 10 minutes on DI. Okay. But in a year wherein DI becomes slightly easier, like say 2019, for example, 2019 DI was not very difficult, manageable DI. Okay. I would probably spend those extra 5 minutes because I know that the calculation bit is not very difficult. It's manageable, right? So I might spend 15 minutes in those things. That is something that I can do, but 10 to 15 minutes is decent enough when it comes to DI, not more than that, at least at this point in time, right? So by now you would have been done with more or less 1 hour of your test taking, and now you would have 1 hour left for the 2 sections that I consider to be my forte. So logical reasoning, I will give another 15-20 minutes. I'll try to solve at least those 2 or 3 puzzles sets that are there. Standalone questions, maybe out of 4 questions, 1 or 2 questions will be straightforward generally. तो वो वाले कर सकते उतना you do some 10 questions in 20-25 minutes, 15-20 minutes, sorry. Then you go to Quant. Quant के अंदर 25 minutes में try to solve as many as you can. I'm sure you will be, if you are like good at Quant, you will be able to solve at least 10 to 11 or 12 questions out of 25 that in 25 minutes. So utna to I think should be manageable. 2 minutes per question in Quant is decent enough. Okay. Then you have a buffer of 20 minutes. Usme you can decide which sections were the ones that were easy, which sections were the ones that were difficult. The ones that were easy, jahan pe let's say an RC you figured out was easy, but you had run out of your 20 minutes in the first round, so to say, then you can take that RC here. You saw some questions in Quant that you felt were easy, but you needed some time to solve them. You can take those here. You saw an LR puzzle which you thought given a minute you would be able to solve, take it. So that is basically the buffer that I have. Okay. Written context. So I have been sticking to this strategy ever since there were even when there used to be an OMR sheet that used to be filled. This was basically the time wherein I used to sit and mark all my answers. So whatever answers I have ticked on my question paper, I have to sit and fill those bubbles. So that's why I have stuck to this strategy. Right? Obviously, bubble filling ka time nikal gaya abhi, so now you don't really have to worry about that. So this is basically a nice buffer that. Fine. So that's what you go for. One thing that I am very particular about is not exceeding these time limits. I can sort of get done with GK in 5 to 6 minutes. You don't need more than 5-6 minutes for GK generally if you can read fast, right? But 10 minutes is the upper limit for GK. 11th minute pe I should not be doing GK. Even if there is something left in GK, chalega, chhod do, nahi chahiye. We'll look at it maybe during the buffer. But I will not spend the 11th minute on GK generally. Verbal ability, 15 minutes, end of the story. Do not spend the 26th minute doing verbal ability. You have to be that strict with your timelines, right? So that is basically what you go for. Why I have kept LR and Quant at the end is because these are my stronger sections. So you can put your stronger sections towards the end. I generally like to end things on a high. So I am not someone who will start with easy questions. I'll pick easy questions. I'll solve those easy questions. And as you go deeper and deeper into the test, it starts becoming more and more difficult. I don't like that kind of an approach towards life, let's say, for example, right? So even if I'm having food, I'll keep the best stuff for the end. The best bit of the food will be kept for the end. That might sound weird to some people, but that's basically how I operate throughout. And it also applies to my test taking strategy. So whatever is the difficult part. So GK for me was a very difficult part. VARC is something that I don't teach VARC as a subject, right? So that is a difficult part. DI is something that is considered to be difficult by a lot of people. I'll get rid of those things in the first hour. Next hour is something that I am looking forward to. And even if I mess up my first hour, it's perfectly fine because I have LR and Quant coming up. And I know that on a given day, I can do very well at LR and Quant. So that is basically my logic when it comes to solving questions in this manner. Okay. If you are someone who takes a lot of time solving Quant questions, you have to understand whether it is question specific or section specific, right? If you are spending a lot of time on select questions, avoid those questions in the first round. That's the simplest advice that I can give. At a section level, if you are taking a lot of time to solve, then obviously you will have to limit your attempts is what I would suggest. So in this kind of a test, I would not give 40 minutes to Quant as a section. It's very difficult for me to give 40 minutes or to advise you to give 40 minutes to Quant as a section, because you never know. Let's say Quant is difficult in general, then what will be? IIFT 2015 Quant was very easy. 20 questions you could have got if you were good at Quant. 20 out of 20 you could have got, right? But an IIFT 2018 or an IIFT 2017 for that matter had difficult Quant. I can't expect you to go beyond 15 questions out of 20 or 12, 13 questions out of 20, right? So we have to take a call depending on the context. But if it is a section level thing, limit your attempts. Limit fewer questions, it's okay. Try to do other questions quickly. And if you have a buffer at the end, you can accommodate some more Quant questions. But don't spend your resources on one section. That should not happen. Right? The other strategy that we had is this one. Again, you do whatever you know. So the idea is to do it in two halves. In the first half, you clear the cutoff. In the second half, you basically look at maximizing the score. So this is not 120. This should be 60 more or less. So 5 minutes of GK, 10 minutes of VA, 2 RCs, 15 to 17 minutes, 1 set of DI, 8 to 10 minutes, 2 sets of logical reasoning, 15 minutes, 5 to 6 questions from Quant, 10 minutes. So this will be 5 plus 10, 15, 15 plus roughly 25. So 40, 55 and 65. So roughly 60-65 minutes we'll spend, and in those 60-65 minutes we'll clear the cutoffs. Okay? So GK mein 5 minutes ke andar whatever you get is a bonus. Verbal ability 10 minutes. Let's say you end up solving some 7-8 questions. Let's say for example, get everything right. Reading comprehension mein 8 questions to solve. Let's say TI ke andar you solve 4 questions. So 20 questions till now. LR ke andar 2 sets, another 6 questions, so 26. Quant ke andar another 5-6 questions. So you have already cleared that 90-95 ka limit. After that, whatever 1 hour you have, you only have to score around 30 marks to be on the safe side. Okay. So this is another way of looking at things. This is basically where I'm assuming that you like to get done with the easier bit first, and then keep the difficult things for the end. So that is what we are going for in this particular context. Varun, I have mentioned it right at the beginning of the session. I think you might have to look at the recording for this one. Okay. Sectional cutoffs kitne honge, I have already mentioned. Okay. So this is basically the first half in which you will be able to, in which you should be able to do these things. This is like basically going through a buffet. You essentially go to each dish and you take a bit of everything. You see what exactly is where, and then you basically go and eat more of what you like. Okay. Avantika already mentioned it. I have mentioned it in detail at the beginning. It's out of 100. It comprises of all the criteria that has been given to you. Okay. Now, overall strategy, if you look at it, it's a game of 2 halves. The second strategy that I mentioned, and even the first one that I mentioned in a way. The second strategy, more particularly, is a game of 2 halves. First half may clear your sectional cutoffs and be on track to clear the overall cutoff as well. Second half may maximize your overall score. Right. The one thing that is present at the IIFT, which I think even last year was very useful to people, was view the question paper option. So I think view it as PDF or view question paper. There's an option that you get. Now, once you use that option, you will be able to see the entire test in the form of a scrollable sheet in a way, right? So that is generally going to be much more easier to browse through compared to looking at the panel wale questions. Because what happens is IIFT ke andar, because there is more data that is present, sometimes you can have horizontal scrolling and vertical scrolling. So vertical scrolling to will be there, but you also have horizontal scrolling in case the table is slightly larger than usual. So to eliminate that bit, what you can do is you can use the view question paper option, might help you view it in a better manner. Those of you who don't know or who are not comfortable with this thing, I would suggest that mocks mein isko try kar lena. What you can do is you can look at it in the form of that sheet itself. Anyway, you are going to look and solve on your paper, na? So look at that sheet. Question 1, 2, 3, 4 jo honge na, write your options, correct answer ke options on your sheet. So if your if your answer for question 1 is A, correct answer for question 2 is D, correct answer for question 3 is A again, correct answer for question 4 is C. So A, D, A, C. Then just click A, D, A, C on the screen, so that you can do, right? But this generally helps minimize effort. Also present in simcats, yeah. Abhay, there is no restriction on rough sheets. Generally, there isn't, unless unless your center is extremely stingy or something. Okay. Exam strategy wise, I covered most of it, but the first thing is be prepared for long RC passages. Long matlab 1000 words. Someone was asking me if reading Aeon articles at this point in time is a good idea. I think you should be able to read 1000 word articles. Aeon goes overboard. Aeon is 4000 words more or less, but 1000 words, 1000, 1200 words ka comfort if you have, I think you should be fine. Okay. So Aeon, if it helps you, read it, but don't read it as a chore. If you're just reading it just to get it out of the way and have a checkbox karne ke liye, if you're reading it, I am sure it will not help. Okay. But if you're reading it because you want to understand RCs nicely and you want to understand different perspectives, different topics, then go. Otherwise, there is no direct correlation. The second thing is higher order math is again slightly important. Be mentally prepared is what I'm saying. It's okay if you don't know stuff. Don't start doing matrices, Newton-Raphson method. वो सब करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. Functions may get into difficult functions and all. There is no need to do that. Be mentally prepared. Don't let it happen that you go to the test to suddenly see a question and because of that one question, you get so rattled that you mess up your remaining 15 questions. That should not happen, right? So you be mindful that this is something that can happen, right? It's not something that you have to answer, but be mentally prepared. Okay? Insanely tough DI sets, be mentally prepared. If you see an insanely tough DI set, don't be in that mindset that, acha, is it difficult for me or is it difficult for everyone else? Obviously, it's difficult for everyone else. You have prepared very well for the test, right? So you don't need further validation in terms of whether it's easy or difficult. If you find it difficult, everyone else is going to find it difficult. That brings me to my second point. Don't be scared of GA. Everyone out there is. Even if I run a poll here, I'm not running a poll, but even if I run a poll here, let's say, and I ask people, how many of you feel extremely comfortable about GK? Except a handful of people, I think roughly 80 to 90% of the people here will say that they are not very comfortable. Even if you look at the larger population, roughly 80-90% will tell you that they are not comfortable with GK. They might be able to clear cutoffs, but you will always see that there is a minority that is present who will consider themselves good at GK. Right? Now, if 90% of the population is scared of a section, why are you scared of that section? See, worst case, what is going to happen? 90% of the people are going to flunk GK now. So you can still be in the top 10%. Right? So knowledge-wise, what I'm saying is, you should not be scared of it. Right? It's extremely and it's very sad, right? When I see people who clear all the cutoffs and then mess up their GK cutoff. I have been in a situation similar to that in the past, so that's why I can relate to this. But I know people who have done exceptionally well at the remaining 3 sections and have not cleared the GK cutoff. And why was that the case? Because people were not very aggressive in terms of GK. So what I generally follow is, you know what the GK cutoff might look like. Let's say it's 8 marks. 8 marks basically means that you have to get 3 answers correct out of 20. Now, if you have even a casual understanding of GK, I don't think that you should not be able to answer 3 questions out of 20. There is no, if you're not able to do that, then I don't know, right? But you look at any past IIFT paper, you look at your mocks, I'm sure you will be able to answer 3 questions. Going ahead, if you go slightly beyond that, 3 questions out of 20 is the bare minimum that you need to do. So 4 questions out of 20 is the bare minimum that you need to do. Let's say, right? You look at the entire GK section, you are able to get those 4 correct answers for sure, but there are another 6 questions where you are 50-50. Let's say, right? 6 questions, if you are 50-50, even if you get 2 correct out of 6, you are still fine, no? 2 correct out of 6 is also going to give you something positive. So you will get +3 and you will lose -2. You are still getting a +1. Right? So that way, if you think about GK and you go for those half attempts, you will see your fear going away. I'm not saying you will score insanely high marks in GK. 30 में से 20 marks निकालना in GK is not, I'm not seeing it to be a commonplace thing. It might happen, but it's not a commonplace thing. But instead of fighting for those cutoff का thing, 8 marks or 9 marks में से किधर तो मिलेगा, and you are at 8.5 or 7.5, God forbid, then you are in big trouble anyway. So what I would suggest is try to be slightly more aggressive. That 4 questions, I think I messed up the calculation. 6 questions, so it doesn't matter. 5 to 6 questions. Okay. But even if you do that, I think you should be fine. जो भी cutoff है GK, 4.5, 5.5, whatever is the cutoff, right? But typically you will need to solve 4 to 5 questions at least confidently. Uske baad 50-50 questions bhi you can take a guess. Now I'm not saying everybody go and do this thing. Try it out in your mocks. Try it out in past IFTs. If you're convinced, go for it. If you're not convinced, it's fine. Not a problem. Okay. Why to attempt something we don't know in GK section? Chirag, I just mentioned 50-50 and GK section may see it's not a quiz. In a quiz, you are expected to give one answer. You generally don't get options. Yahan pe you have options, right? If out of 4 options, if I ask you who won whichever award, let's say who won the Padma Shri award this year karke, even if you have an inkling of something, right, you might still be able to answer the question. Kuch to inkling hoga, matlab something you will be able to figure out. Somewhere you might have heard this name Gowda. You don't know the first name, but you know it's some Gowda. Only one option says Gowda. The other options are all some other names. Right. Now you know that achha, this is basically something that might work. Something like that. Leap of faith. Yeah. Harshit, IIFT Kakinada, I don't know. Nobody knows what's going on at IIFT Kakinada. So if they start operations, then they generally have a combined process. So typically what happens is they will not differentiate IIFT Delhi, Kolkata, Kakinada in the first phase. Second phase ke andar, once you get your final score, once you are done with your interviews, uske baad, depending on your preference, you will be allotted campuses. Kakinada, I don't know if it's functional. Delhi, Kolkata are both functional. Kakinada, I think they are planning to start operations, but it has been present as an option over the last 2 or 3 years now that I remember. So again, I don't know what to say about Kakinada. Okay, we'll deal with it at a later point in time when we have more clarity. Chirag, Delhi, Kolkata have the same placements. So basically they have a cumulative process. There are some companies which might ask which campus you are from, but for all practical purposes, Delhi, Kolkata are treated as the same campus. So Kolkata people go to Delhi and have their placements there. That is basically how it works. Okay. Last point, ye to third wala to we have covered. Last point, do not overshoot your time limits and do not be under pressure when you're attempting the last section. So last section is basically the one wherein the entire thing will fall on you, as in you will be under a lot of pressure. Make sure that you are not attempting the worst section at the last. Just make sure that you are doing that. Okay. Yeah. Study plan, take 5 marks. People are asking if 5 marks are enough. Yes, 5 marks are enough. 5 marks are more than enough. Because IIFT CAT ke andar na, it's a test of content. You're also preparing for content when you're taking mocks. So the questions that you might see at the SimCats might not be the ones that you might have seen in your class exercises. So we are going gradually at a higher level, right? That is what we are doing. IIFT ke andar, it's not exactly about learning theory separately and solving mocks separately. Whatever concepts have been asked to you during the test would have been the ones that you would have studied earlier. ऐसा नहीं है कि वहाँ पे नया content is being created. Your mocks are going to be utilized primarily to consolidate your strategy. So take one mock, think about what strategy works for you, try to implement it over the next mock, see if it works, if you're comfortable with it. If it works, then keep on doing it over the next 3 months. So that is basically how they're supposed to be taken. I'll talk about the scores and the percentiles on the last slide, indicative things that I have got from the product team. But more or less, if you look at it, it's mostly to build a good strategy and to have an understanding of how to tackle those many questions in 120 minutes. That is the basic idea. Okay. When to Neil, I don't know. Anyway, you have 5 IIFT mocks that are present. Usko bhi sectional kar denge, so I don't see the point of doing that. Honestly, I'll convey the feedback, but I don't see the reason personally, right? But anyway, doesn't matter. When to take the mocks? See, typically I would suggest take a couple of mocks before the CAT. So considering that today is the 14th and you have CAT coming up in a couple of weeks, so maybe 2 mocks before the CAT, and once CAT is done, take the remaining 3 mocks. That is what I would suggest. If you can do a 3-2, even that is fine, not a problem. But you can keep a slightly larger chunk after CAT. Just make sure that you are not getting carried away by your CAT performance in a positive or negative manner. जैसे ही CAT खत्म हो जाता है, forget about the analysis, forget about cutoffs, nothing is going to matter. Put your head down and start preparing for the IIFT Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, right? Don't waste Monday, Tuesday. Acha, 2 questions galat the. Oh, the cutoff is going to increase. Or DI was very easy this time. Don't get into that mindset. Start preparing for IIFT as soon as you can. That way you will be able to accommodate 3 mocks in that week as well. So 2-3 is a decent split. Which month should you focus for current affairs? Typically last 1 year. 2 years is what they say, but 1 year is good enough. ठीक है. GK के लिए GK zone you have IIFT compendium, IIFT tests, so you have all the resources under GK zone. थोड़ा सा search for it, you will be able to find it out. So you have static GK, you have monthly GK snippets, and you also have exam specific GK जिसके अंदर you will have IIFT का compendium. So it's a nice compendium, छोटा सा compendium है. I would suggest that you read the monthly snippets as well. How to read it? Don't start making notes and writing down everything that you read. It's not going to help at all. Generally, sometimes it might, but yeah, generally it's not going to help. What you need to do is you need to read as much as you can and not try to memorize, but at least try to have how would I put it, right? The diffused memory in your head. यहाँ कुछ तो किधर तो पढ़ा था जहाँ पे मतलब something had happened. Okay, that's it. So no need to remember stuff by going into the depth of it. Yeah, blueprint. Yeah, you can say blueprint. IIFT is a speed-based test. Yes, last couple of years it has been. But if you look at IIFT 17 and 18, they were not exactly speed-based tests. So it changes. So you can't say that hamesha speed-based rahega, but yes, last couple of years it has been more or less speed-based. What I can do on the exam if I don't know GK at all, Rohit? Again, try to figure out basic stuff. Considering that you have a good 3 weeks, it's not an excuse that you don't know GK at all. During the test, it's not going to happen that you don't know GK. It's not going to happen unless you're extremely bad at GK, unless you have no idea what's going on around you. It's not going to happen that you don't know GK at all. So remove that thought out of your head कि GK बिल्कुल 0 questions आएंगे out of 20. It's not going to happen. You will know at least rivers and capitals and currencies and stock exchanges and company के taglines, headquarters. उतना तो you can do. Namrata, I just mentioned on this slide. See, it's there right in front of you. GK zone. Go to GK zone. Eat the entire content that is present on GK zone. You should be fine. Okay. Solve as many past year papers as you can. This has to be done. There is no option to solving past year papers. Past year papers करने ही हैं. If you want to crack IIFT, you have to take past year papers. You take 15 marks, 20 marks, 100 marks. Unless you do past year papers, you are not going to get the hang of IIFT as a test. Okay? Because IIFT is something that you can crack methodically. मतलब आराम से बैठ के plan करके looking at the test, you can crack IIFT methodically. मतलब properly. There are proper fixed sort of response wale sets, right? So if you go through all the tests that you have at your disposal, I think you should get a very good understanding of what IIFT as a test looks. How do you go there? AdMat, you have to go to your workshops. So this is basically last week, I think, but channel ke andar jaake, if you look at it, you will get your workshops as well. Or I think it will be on the live portal, either of the two places. So that you will be able to get. Machine input and output is important. Yeah, Dhananjay, it is important. So that is what IIFT compendium. See, GK zone ke andar you go, you will see exam specific GK. Wahan pe you will see IIFT. Okay. Yeah. So people are asking what is a good score in IIFT mocks. As a blanket, this is basically what I have been provided with. So 99.5 percentile is roughly 182 marks, 99 is 173 and so on. So it's, I think, slightly on the easier side compared to last year's IIFT. Last year's IIFT, from what I remember, 135-ish was 99.7-ish kind of percentile is what I remember. So I think it's slightly on the easier side. This is basically on the basis of people who have taken the tests. So obviously, as more people take the test, it's bound to change. The sectional cutoffs are again what I have mentioned: 15 to 18, 19, 22, 28, 32, 4 to 6. Okay, this is applicable for all the 5 mock IIFTs that we have. Is IIFT admit card available? I don't think so, Shubham. I have not seen any news that mentions that. So I don't think it's available yet. Again, someone can correct me if it's available. No, it's not available yet. These are marks. Yes, these are marks. Not number of questions. Sorry, I'm so sorry. This is number of marks. Sorry. Okay. So these are number of marks. This is the percentile. This is not area, percentile and marks. I messed this table up, but fine. This is section-wise cutoffs. Okay. So let's see some questions. Specific way to prepare for IIFT GK, as I mentioned, just read 65 in 10, 70 in 12. It's possible, definitely possible. You just have to do a good job at the interview, and it's a fair process. I have always regarded IIFT as a very fair process. So if you have a good candidature, if you have worked hard on your interview and GD skills, I think it's a very fair process. How many questions to be skipped to not have negative marking? No, Nitin, I think you're talking about that. That's not IIFT. There won't be a cutoff like 138 this year. Ruba shouldn't be, na? Because they are giving you weight for your 10th, 12th and everything. So overall cutoff kuch nahi hoga. Depending on your performance across your 10th, 12th, graduation, diversity, gender diversity and IIFT score, you will get your call. Okay. Verbal reasoning, more or less of routine level, assumption, inference, conclusion, basic type that you would have seen earlier. And MAT level, you can say. Do we have to prepare for module 5 for IIFT? Yes, Mansi. Some of the topics, so input output I think is there. Data sufficiency might be there. So वो सब चीज के लिए you might have to do. Coding, decoding might be there in a थोड़ा सा deeper manner. So for that you might have to prepare module 5. Yes. Questions related to cubes, cube cutting and solving. Suyash might want to be prepared. Basic questions I'm saying. So corner squares में 3 colors होंगे. Edge squares will have 2 colors. Face squares, cubes will have 1 color. How many cubes are there? All those kind of things. Yes, but deeper questions in terms of cubes, I wouldn't really see. Satyam again. I didn't see any logo question. In which year logo question is asked? Old IIFT paper, Satyam. As in way back they used to ask. So sometimes they might ask you something. Or one of the years there was a question which asked which company's logo is derived from its name. Which company's literal meaning or the name of which company literally means 3 diamonds. So in that case, you might want to establish a logo flashback. So Mitsubishi is basically the answer. So if you know that there are 3 diamonds that are there, so you might know. Or 3 stars is Samsung. So those kind of things. So वहाँ पे logo might be. VA words and crosswords. Abhishek, there is nothing different as such. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि मतलब crossword के अंदर कुछ अलग question पूछ लिया. It basically means that one word will have a common letter with another word. That's the only difference. Otherwise, it's basically the same question. Okay. First questions, then passage is what I would suggest. But if it's a very short RC and if there are inferential questions, obviously you have to be prepared for the other thing as well. What to do? Prepare word origins. You can just have a look at common French phrases, common Greek, common French words, common Greek words, common German words. So Latin. If you do these 3-4 things, I think you should do. अगर आता है तो. So you can just go for those things. When will it be released? I think a couple of weeks before the test, I believe. Should we do what format easy? I already answered that. Theta question in IIFT, no. Interface was a different, interface was different. I had to scroll a lot. How should I handle? Again, view question paper option might work in that case. How to manage CAT and IIFT simultaneously? Again, bulk of your IIFT preparation will happen after the CAT. Abhi ke liye just have a look at some IIFT tests. Maybe you can look at one IIFT test every couple of days just to be in the zone. That's it. But as soon as your CAT ends, that is basically when you will take it up a notch. Minimum score domain for selection. As I said, minimum score ka certainty chahiye to fir 130 is what I would say. 130, 135, 140 maybe. Again, for certainty. But depending on your profile and everything, 110, 115 might generally be decent. How many total marks? I already answered. 2 plus 3 is a good split. Is there any book we can use for GK prep? People used to refer to competition success review and all those things, but I don't see the point there. It's basically the same thing that you have. So it's present in a much more concise and organized manner. So I don't know why would you want to look at a 1000-page book. So that is basically that. Okay. What if someone till date has not given any SIM cards? Take some SIM cards. I hope you're asking for the CAT. So go ahead to take at least a couple of SIM cards before you go for the test and hope for the best. I'm not an IMS student. How do I prepare for GK? That's up. Then you can look for these compendiums that I spoke about. Something like a competition success review or something similar to a Manorama yearbook might be. We will take past year papers in test format. Not necessary. If you have figured out your strategy by taking your mock IIFTs, then past papers you can just sit and solve normally. Not given SIM card, should go for IIFT or not? You can go for IIFT. There is very little overlap that is there between SIM cards and IIFT. But CAT preparation generally helps for IIFT preparation. Okay. How to work on DI calculation speed as well as approximation. Abhishek, You can go for that speed math booklet that you would have had at the beginning. Just focus on ratios. Just focus on calculating things approximately. If it is too difficult, it doesn't make sense. Be prepared for that. Typically, knowing your 10%, 5%, 1%, 50% is going to be decent enough. If the question expects you to do stuff beyond that, if your options are 21.563, 21.562, 21.561 and so on, so then best to let go of the question. Usko matlab, even I can't be confident when I'm marking an answer to that question. 95 in 10th, 97 in 12th. So how much out of 300? You have very good scores in your 10th and 12th. I'm sure you will be able to calculate. Non-engineering, obviously you'll be able to calculate, right? So 25 is already done. 43 is what you need to get. 18 out of 73. How many out of 300? That is the question for. Okay. Mocks 105 already mentioned the cutoff. CAT doesn't prepare you for IIFT because IIFT question types are slightly different. So again, as I said, past papers. That is the only thing that I can recommend for understanding IIFT trends. 2 years gap after graduation. It depends on how you are able to answer the questions. But if you are able to answer the questions well, then it should not be a problem ideally. I know people who have taken 3 years ka gap and have got to good colleges. So I'm not saying that 2 years ka gap will forbid you from going to the college, but yes, you will have to justify it a lot more compared to the other candidates. Yeah, these are real percentiles and scores, I believe. SNAP or IIFT ke beech mein, I would go for SNAP possibly, but considering the way in which SNAP was conducted last year, I think IIFT is a much safer bet, is what I would say. But IIFT ka the only problem is there is only one college practically that you are looking at. SNAP mein you have a lot of options. Okay? Yeah, it's a decent book for GK matlab, but again I don't see the point. It's much more than what you have. So there will be a lot of random stuff as well in Manorama. So I don't know. You can go for it, but it's going to take you a lot of extra effort. Is what I think. Okay. Recording, I'm not sure, but it should be available on your channel from what I understand. What percentile should a GEM target in IIFT? As many as you can, Siddharth. So I would suggest at least a 97 kind of a thing. How to manage MyCAT IIFT with CAT prep? The same way in which you are going to manage your job, because as a manager you will have to do a lot of things at once. It's not that different, you see. So MyCAT is not something that will require a lot of preparation as such. Once you take care of the descriptive part, you are fine. Once you are mentally prepared for the psychometric test, you are fine. IIFT ke andar, as I mentioned, all those things you do, you are fine. These things don't require 5 hours, 6 hours every day, right? Couple of hours of IIFT prep every day is good enough. Couple of hours of MyCAT, 1 hour of MyCAT prep in a day is good enough. So 3 hours, and CAT prep will obviously take another 3-4 hours. Obviously, considering that it's the last couple of weeks, you will have to put in extra effort. Okay. 43.5 is what was there last year. Nothing is safe. As I said, it can go to 50, it can go to 35. So take a call depending on the test. What are the category wise cutoffs? Ritesh, I've already mentioned it at the beginning. Okay. Chalo, 60 percentile in SimCATs is equivalent to how much percentile in CAT? 60 and I don't know, somewhere around 80s, I believe. 80s to mid 80s. Is it a common trend that people don't do good at SimCATs but exceptionally good in actual CAT? Not necessarily. People who do well in the CAT, at the SimCATs generally do well at the CAT. From where to learn root words? So Udit, there is, you can Google it. Okay. Targeted percentile for CAT and IIFT. 85-ish, I think should be decent enough. 85 to 90 is what I would be comfortable with. How to prepare for vocab? Udit, you will have to read a lot, and that's basically how you prepare. Go for word lists if you can. Those GRE word lists that you get, all the vocabulary book that would have been given by IMS, first module of IMS, all those things will help you prepare for the vocabulary section. Okay, chalo. All right, so I'll close the session now. I think I have answered most of the queries that were there. Yeah, how many sets to crack and everything I have mentioned on the slide. So the second strategy has taken care of how many sets to answer, how many questions do you need to solve, everything has been taken care of. So go through the recording again, go through the entire video that we did today, right? So I've already overshot my mandate by a good 30 minutes. So I think I'll close the session now. All right, so all the best everyone, all the best with CAT, all the best for IFT. Do well at both the tests. I hope to see you in the middle somewhere. Let's see if we are able to catch up for another session or something. But even if you don't turn up, all the best for all the tests. Do well, and I hope you get into the colleges of your choice. Okay. All right. So I'll close this session now. Thank you everyone for turning up on a Sunday morning. I hope many of your doubts were cleared. And again, I wish you all the best with the test.